The 6th of June, 2022. Thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel and go to my website, www.susanmealing.com, which is the same as www.ladydoribell.com. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel. And if you're going to leave a comment, make sure to have etiquette and respect. So this particular makeshift that I actually did create myself. So for those who remember, in 2020, I do my own thing the way I do regarding the Austin rallies during that time frame. And since it's close to the 4th of July, well, you know. It's just a little bit to a month to that point in time. So it's a little early celebration-ish. However, I figure it is perfect timing because other than the outfit aspect. So back in the year when, for those who remember, Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake at the Super Bowl. So I'm going to talk about that. Yes, I know this is the year 2022. However, I figure this is a little bit apropos in a degree in some capacities. And yet it is as it is. So at this time in, I think it was 2004 maybe? I think it was 2004. The Super Bowl was going on. The neighbor to my house in San Antonio, Manny, who worked for the USPS at the time, he had a Super Bowl party and he asked if I wanted to attend. And that in turn translated to my now dead ex-husband as well. And so I was like, yeah, cool. You know, you want me to bring anything? And he was like, no, not really. You don't really have to bring anything. Are you sure I can bring something? No. Just it's fine for you to show up. Okay, fine. So we go. And mind you, this was after, I think it was a year and a half, maybe 2 years at most. There was a football player for the Dallas Cowboys, I think, if I remember correctly. I can't remember his name because it was literally just a year after, maybe I think it was a year and a half after waking up from my coma after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. And he knew, my now dead ex-husband knew the guy from high school, and he had been, I think it was the Dallas Cowboys, although it might have been the Pittsburgh Steelers, which, yes, I know I just sounded like total female and stuff. However, give me a break. I was only maybe a year and a half awake from my coma after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, and I still had the subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain. So, there's a little bit of stuff I was dealing with at that time. And so we went out there, and I don't even know how or where. I think it was somewhere near Fort Worth or something like that. And went to his house, and his mom and dad were living with him in this house. And I had my son, and I talked with his mom a whole bunch. And she had this little, I think she had a Pomeranian. And I was like, yeah, that's a cute dog. I kind of like bigger dogs, like, Great Danes compared to a Pomeranian, but it's a cute dog, Just saying. And so his dad had showed me around the house, and this house was just stunning. Had an island area in the kitchen. It had the lighting, these huge refrigerator, and then there was this library area, and it's like, books! There's so many books, yay! Because I'm this dork. And so his dad was like, yeah, well, they're there. And it's like, but what books are there? And it's just books. There's so many bugs. And so then, this huge kitchen, vaulted ceilings in the kitchen. And I'm not talking, a 13 or 14 foot vaulted ceiling. I'm talking, 15, 20 foot vaulted ceiling. And it's, this kitchen is amazing. Wow, I could cook so much food. And the dad was like, well, why? Because it's a kitchen. This kitchen is huge. It's like the size of a garage, this kitchen. It's like a 2-car garage in this kitchen. This is amazing. Look at these appliances. And so I turned total Yenta-ish. And, oh, wow, you could. And then I go on and on and on and on. And the mom and the dad are just like, yeah, well, yeah, you could. Wow, you're like, I like to cook. I really do. I really like to cook. So, so I was talking with them for a while. My now dead ex-husband, then he went and talked with, I think, the dad at the time. And so I'm talking with the mom and everything like that. And I get to meet the son a little bit later. And he's this tall guy. He's like, I don't know, something like 6'4", 6'5", maybe 275 at the time. And I'm just like, oh, hi. And so his dad was talking about how he did not like any of the females that his son was dating. And I'm sure he has plenty of cheerleaders, that are whatever, and his mom was talking about that too, and she's like, yeah, there's a few cheerleaders that he's run through, and sort of that sort of discussion, and as well, it is as it is. So his mom asked me a bunch of questions about my background and my past, and it was, well, there's this, that, and the other, I was born and raised in New Jersey, and she got real quiet, and she said, what do you mean you were born and raised in New Jersey? And, I was born and raised in New Jersey. And this is after 2001, I think this was 2002. And she was like, what do you remember from New Jersey? And, well, went through a bunch of areas and told her about how I grew up going to the 5 boroughs and stuff like that. And she just, really? Yeah, I have no idea who they are. And I'm just going on and on about that because, why not? And so I think we were in the 2nd story of the house. And I mean, this house was huge. And I had made the joke, I could get lost here. And the mom was like, well, why? And I said, I don't even remember which way we walked around here. And she goes, what do you mean? And I said, oh, it's just, I think it has something to do with my head injury. And she was like, what do you mean? And I was told something about whatever. And she was like, okay, well, and so she said something, she had wanted me to get her husband or something like that. And I was like, well, I can't right now because I don't remember which way we came. And she was like, well, he's, okay. And so she gave me the directions and I got lost. It was that big of a house. It's just, I don't know which way. I can make fun of myself. I don't know which way to go, George. I don't know which way to go. Because General George Washington, Altena Presbyterian Church. Since I can see spirits and stuff. And so it was as it was. And so then I had to, I had to have a babysitter in the house. And I'm a biological adult, essentially. I got lost in this house. It was huge. It's a huge house. I mean, even the 2nd story had, essentially like 15, 20 foot ceilings. I haven't ever seen a house that big before. Literally. Mainly because in New Jersey, yeah, you can have vaulted ceilings, but they're usually about 15 feet at the tallest. And that's ish in comparison. And so I'm walking around, it's like, I don't know where I'm going. So this is the first football player guy that I had kind of ish met regarding his family and stuff like that. And we had talked about some of the after effects from a head injury in that reference. And the mom and the dad were like, well, what about this? Have you tried this? And I explained what prescriptions I was on during the time frame. And at that point, I still had the subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain. And so it was as far as that was concerned, explained what I could in reference to my education before, and just went down the list as far as that was concerned. And they were very kind, and it was a huge house. I mean, it was stunning. It really was a stunning house, but it was so huge. I didn't haven't ever seen a house that big before. And so suppose I could make a joke about my website, www.susanvling.com, because possibly, I don't know. And so, in a non-physical way compared to, of course, right? And so later, I think it was 2004, was the Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake halftime show for that particular football Super Bowl. And so we went over, and my son was toddling around. My daughter was in the car seat as far as that was concerned, and there were just males. I was the only female other than my daughter, and my daughter was in the car seat, because that's, for those who are parents, you know how that's easier and stuff like that, and she was just napping anyway. And so one of the males, he goes, "Oh, really, Manny? Gonna have a girl in here?" And excuse me, I am a female. Thank you very much. I'm a mom, and I go down the list, and this guy's like, whatever, as long as you're not, one of those types. I don't know what one of those types are that you're referring to as far as that was concerned. So I asked who was playing. Not that it really mattered, to be honest, because it was one of those, and I was actually asked, so one of the other males there, I think there were a total of 8 or 9 males other than Manny, had said, oh, well, well, what teams do you know? I said, well, I know the New Jersey Jets, and all the guys, oh, and okay, I know the New York Giants, and okay, and I think that there's a team that has numbers in them. And before I could finish saying, and I'm not referring to the jerseys, one of the guys said that, and yeah, well, I was born and raised in New Jersey, so there. So no matter what, all right? No matter what. And so one of the guys started laughing. He was like, well, you have a sense of humor. Okay, that's cool. And there's no team that wears jerseys, and I was born and raised in New Jersey. So anyway, the guys were like, well, it's the North Carolina Panthers against the New England Patriots. Who are you? Because they had one of those football scoreboard something another. I had never seen anything like this before. Then again, I was, in my early 20s at that point, so I didn't have much of a chance to ever learn what gambling was. And I hadn't gone to play poker yet. So, so I have absolutely no idea. And so Manny's like, well, pick a team. And I'm like, the Patriots. And so all of the males just looked at me. They were all, "You're gonna go with the Patriots, are you?" Yeah. Why? And they're like, because, the Panthers are kind of, that's cute, okay. I'm going with the Patriots. Why why are you gonna go with the Patriots? Why not with the Panthers? Well, because I was born and raised in New Jersey. They're from up north, correct? And the guys were like, yeah, they're kind of, from Massachusetts, duh. Yeah, okay, well, I'll go with them. And so one of the other guys, he was like, well, they have this player and this player and this player, and he's no match for this player, and this guy's no match for this player, and whatever, all this sort of doohickey mabob stuff. And I'm just, yeah, okay, I'm gonna go with the Patriots though. And so so Manny's like, well, okay, what's your spread? I don't know. What's a spread? Are you talking about going to the kitchen and cooking something, that's kind of sexist, Manny? And he was like, wait, what? And I'm like, it's okay. So he had this projection screen type of TV, which I had seen similar in the Army during basic training, though not this way at all, of course. And so Manny was like, well, pick some numbers. And so I was like, whatever the numbers were. And then apparently there wasn't a football score that was that level. And so, apparently he had meant, I don't know why, but apparently you're supposed to pick less than 5 numbers compared to 5 numbers at the very minimum. Though the irony is the jersey numbers for certain guys, and the other guys that were at the football Super Bowl game party, they were, as the guys went on the screen, they were like, hey, oh wow. And so it was as it was. Well, during the party, watching the Super Bowl, and I'm just, And so the guys were talking smack because, first, being the only female there, other than my daughter in the car seat, which obviously that's different. Second, because I was the only one who knew anything about football-ish. And so one of the guys during, I think it was halfway through the first quarter, he was like, what do you know about football? Well, I used to play, but I didn't really, play. And the guy was like, what do you mean? I said, well, just throw the ball around in the yard and stuff like that, and talked about stuff. And he was like, oh, okay. So explained where I was born and raised and all that sort of stuff. My biological father, ironically, showed up shortly thereafter to talking about this. And the guys were just, oh, well, okay, this, that, and the other, so on and so forth. Yeah, I think it was 2004 for that reference. And so these guys and I were getting in this heated debate, not just about the football game, but we're talking about different aspects as to the Northeast. Because they were like, oh, you're just going with the Patriots because you were born and raised in New Jersey. Well, yeah, partially, though, it is whatever year, and so this, that, and the other, and I go over a bunch of different factors. And they were like, well, so what? And because they were born and raised in the Northeast area, so I went over some of the details regarding the 11th of September in 2001, and they were like, whoa, you're from where? And so I started explaining, and they were, hold on, and one of the guys actually said, I wish we could put the Super Bowl on pause. What do you mean you're born and raised in New Jersey? And yeah, and one of the other guys was like, isn't that a lot of people that go from New Jersey to New York City? Yeah, the largest commuters are actually from the area I was born and raised. And another one of the guys was like, hold on. You're from where? Okay, so I had a head injury. I don't know why I have to explain this so many times. One of the guys, he was on the couch, he sits up and he's like, seriously? You're who? And so we go over a bunch of the different stuff as far as that was concerned. And one of the guys during the break between the first and second quarter, he's like, would you come outside and smoke with me for a little bit? Well, and at that point I already had pumped enough breast milk that I could actually smoke because my son and my daughter had enough my daughter had enough breast milk until she was 2 years old. My son, by that point he was on regular milk, so it was as it was because he's a year, 2 weeks, and 2 days older. And so I was outside and we were talking and everything like that. And he asked a bunch of questions and then we went back inside and they were just kind of, oh, so, okay, didn't really see that coming. And yeah, one of these days I'm gonna get back out to the New Jersey area and I'm gonna go and figure a few things out. Well, my biological father heard that when I came in. He was at the dining room area table and he looked and he said, "You're gonna do what?" And I said, "I'm gonna go figure a few things out in reference to 9/11 because I know there's some stuff. You remember my nightmare from when I was in second grade." And he was like, he said over his dead body. And it was, well, if it has to be that way. And he was, how dare you say this, da da da. And it's the truth. It is what it is. I'm not going to deny where I was born and raised. And then we had an argument in Manny's house because Mike had acknowledged that him, Anna, and Patricia, my biological little sister, and my biological mother had been out to New Jersey. By that point in time, 5 or 6 times that they had been out to New Jersey since the time frame of 9/11, and I hadn't. And so he was upset because I wanted to go out there, and he didn't see any reason for me to actually do so. And I had explained there are people who have family that need to have answers. And so in Manny's house with all these guys there, they look over at Mike and they were like, so why don't you want her to go back to New Jersey? And Mike was like, oh, she just doesn't need to see that. It's not that big of a deal, so on and so forth. Well, the guy that I had went outside smoking with, he's like, but I got people that were up in that area. It's important. And, the football game that was the Super Bowl kind of faded a little bit. Not that it faded, but the party reason, essentially, was it kind of faded in comparison to the discussion. And some of the guys still watched the football game, though they kind of looked over back and forth. And so Mike got so angry, he just left. He was like, I can't believe you would be this way. And I reminded him, I was like, I fought to go in. You know that I fought to go into the Army. You know about my nightmare from when I was in second grade. You know about this. And it went the way it did. And so it was a big disagreement. I'll leave it at that. For anybody who has met my biological father, you know how that can be. And so at those times, I should clarify. And so we went back and forth as far as this was concerned. He tried to tell my now dead ex-husband about why he thought it wasn't important, which when it came to certain things regarding when my biological father and my biological mother were a certain way, it was one of those, it was kind of a tell, where it was, I knew that I had to do something in one of those references. And so it went the way it did. He had told my now dead ex-husband that, again, over his dead body would be the point in time when I would go to New Jersey. And I said, again, well, that can happen. It'll be what it'll be. I will go back to New Jersey. I will go see this. I will take a look into this, and so on and so forth. And so he left the house. He was infuriated and so on and so forth. Well, in regards of some of the guys, they were like, that was your pops? I was like, yeah. He was in a good mood compared to, and they were like, that's a good mood? Oh, yes. Yeah. He didn't use any swear words, and, well, he didn't do anything in regards of physical except for walking out the door. So, yeah, he was in a good mood. Yeah. And one of the guys was like, whoa, I didn't know that a guy like that. And yeah. So it went the way it did as far as that was concerned. So during the halftime of the Super Bowl, the guy who I had went outside with before, he and I go back outside and we're talking. One of the other guys comes out and they asked a bunch of questions about New Jersey. I used to go, the main beach I would go to when I was really young was Point Pleasant, although up and down the shoreline, and went through a few different situations, and they were like, oh, okay. And I explained where I went to church, and they were kind of baffled as to the length of time regarding Old Tenet Presbyterian Church. Told them about General George Washington's private office and that sort of stuff. And we talked from the time of the first commercial before the halftime show all the way through to, I think it was halfway through the third quarter, as to the amount of questions as far as that point in time. And so then when we went inside, they were like, can't believe you were outside that length of time. You missed this, you missed this, you missed this. And we're like, well, we were talking. And one of the guys was like, you missed seeing a nipple. And it's Nipplegate. And I made the joke, I was at Nipplegate. And then I was like, actually, I have two sisters-in-law, and I could see them being called a certain whatever. And so my now dead ex-husband then says, actually, that's true. My two ex-sisters-in-law in Fort Worth High School, they were known as the Nipples sisters because of the last name as far as that was concerned. And so my now dead ex-husband then looked at me and he was, I can't believe you actually knew that. And, oh, well, I told you I could pick up on certain things and I can see as far as certain factors. And we had a conversation later as far as certain things because he didn't know to the level that I could see. And it was, well, that's just, again, I told you about my nightmare from second grade. I told you what occurred in regards of Old Tenet Presbyterian Church before it occurred. And then at that point in time, Mike and Anna had already confirmed regarding, I guess pun intended, the amount of situations to the energetic portions. And so while it was, oh, she's just a child, or oh, this is just this, at that point in time, after the Super Bowl, I dealt with as I dealt with, as far as that conversation was concerned. And it was as it was, and I had explained, well, I've been truthful. I haven't hidden that. There are reasons in reference to being honest about it, though, it was viewed the way it was viewed when I was a child. But at the Super Bowl game, the individuals there, all of the males were like, so you can see? And I was, yeah, I can see. And they're like, holy, oh my. And yeah, what? They were like, you can actually see. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so one of the guys that I had stood outside smoking with, he had actually brought up, we were just talking, and she went over a few things that I was thinking about, and, that time or within the past month and a half or something, and she just, all this sort of stuff. Yeah. So, yeah. And it was as it was as far as that was concerned, because of those capacities that I could just, and I can't, so when, this is another reason for certain things, because when it was learned, it became really heavy at Old Tenet Presbyterian Church. For some of the time, actually had to go to Robertsville Church, which was off of Church Road at the time, and because of how many situations started occurring because of, and while it worked out for the church, of course, before the guys in the black suits with the black ties and the white button-down shirts had really noticed certain situations, it got pretty heavy. Because, and yes, it's great for the church for having members and visitors as far as that's concerned, but it became so much for me to handle, and my biological mother, my biological father didn't understand that. All they dealt with were people complaining to them, as far as the children in Sunday school, because what they saw was that I was speaking with the different adults. My biological sister started complaining because I was speaking with these adults. And then there was also the guys in the black suits. Well, when it came to the guys in the black suits with the white button-down shirts and the black ties, sometimes they had pinstripe suits, though those were a very small number of guys at that time in the 1990s mainly. It was of anger to some of the people that showed up to Old Tenet Presbyterian Church, because I would stop speaking in the middle of a discussion with someone, and I'd be as polite as I could, say, I gotta go speak with this guy. And because usually they had something that I actually needed to look over, and it wasn't that the other stuff wasn't important, it was usually they had something that I needed to look through as far as paperwork, and not just one or two pieces of paper, several file pieces of paper, sometimes with pictures too. And so it became a thing where every now and then we would go to Robertsville, or I think it was Robertsville Church, just to kind of deal with certain things. So what they dealt with were, I learned more recently, there's this song, Men in Black. I like that song. It's a really good song. I then also saw the video, which is kind of funny in a different capacity. Nonetheless, the guys in the black suit, which is really also irony because of the sunglasses, but not those particular style in comparison. The style they usually had were almost like aviator-ish to a degree sunglasses, but metal frames in comparison. And so compared to the plastic or whatever, the irony of that. And so we'd go talk, well, the individuals, as far as they would go speak with Mike and Anna and complain to Mike and Anna because I was speaking with these guys in the black suits with the white button-down shirts and black ties and fedora hats usually before, or I would stop speaking with to go speak with, and I didn't ever explain why. And there wasn't any reason for me to, in my opinion. And so dealt with that because of a few things at that time frame. If you go to my website, www.susanmeadling.com, same as www.ladydorybell.com, my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, it has a section regarding its Space Force has been officialized in reference to the year 2020. And so, not saying it only had to do with that, there were other situations, those usually having to do with that for the most part. And or the oceanic areas, because Jersey Shore, and especially in the summertime. At that point, there was usually more questions as far as a few things and the way it went through, though because of a few other factors, then it became where, because of these situations, it became difficult, because in New Jersey, so many technology pieces, and this is before cell phone cameras, and so the irony in reference to scuba diving, if they ever thought that, first and foremost, if they ever were a part of pop culture, I wouldn't know. Secondly, my certifications as far as in the comparison to, and a few other factors that I obviously wouldn't know. And because of what I've dealt with as a child and a teenager, it's kind of similar to what's supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle. I wouldn't, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Well, I wouldn't do that if I had any knowledge of whoever they possibly whatever. And in conjunction to that, it was for my certifications, usually for the ones in reference to the Huntsville Quarry. And they were all informed through Richard Thomas regarding that, as well as Jeff Waters. And so those situations went the way they did. But again, it's a respect thing. And so it got hectic because of. So it's kind of ironic, because in the year of 2012, which I hadn't told anybody in the state of Texas as to having met these guys before. And so I had this lunch munch brunch that I had created. It was a weekly meeting, and this guy showed up. And he was in a black suit with a white button-down shirt and a black tie, and he had a fedora. He had some white gauze on his face, though. And so he had asked to speak with me. We were still, I think it was an outdoor patio, but it was on the second floor, or maybe third floor at this location. And it was in reference to, he had a question regarding Club Femme, which at that point in time was when I was still involved, before I had learned, obviously. And so I didn't have any issue. Lady Robin had a huge issue with me speaking with him, which I didn't think that she could see him on the cell phone, obviously, because of. And so it's ironic because of later in the year 2020, having found that song, Men in Black, and it's, oh, well, there's that. Oh, and so then, because I think the way I do, could she see? Could she see the guy in the black suit? Sort of thing regarding it. And then, well, what cell phone did I have? And what, all these different situations as far as my thoughts, because I had never told anybody that I knew these Men in Black guys, because they were usually males. They were usually males and usually in the black suits. And it was, oh, well, they're the guys. And then there were the YouTube videos that started coming forward a little bit more about some of that, which includes the news reports about the Tic Tac regarding the Navy pilot having caught footage of a few things. And so something that I've dealt with since I was a child. And so they usually had a few questions here and there. I know that a black suit is fairly common, especially in the New York City area, though they had a distinctive type of fabric which you could only distinguish in person because of the way the threading had been. And so yeah, there are some high definition cameras now, though there's something I can't really describe about their particular suits, though the closest that I could give as a reference of what you could actually kind of see in person, face to face in person, though not the same way, there's the Apollo 11 interview with the three males, and that sort of a sheen you could see, but in person, face to face in person, and yet the details as to the fabric regarding the way the threading had been. So it's not a good example, though it kind of is in reference to that, to the, if it's even possible to see in that reference. And so I grew up with that. It became a really big issue over a while, mainly because, well, who were these guys that wanted to speak with me? Why were they wanting to ask me questions? And because I couldn't really explain what the paperwork had, because it was usually about 5 to 10 different situations per manila folder for some guys. Other guys, they had the folded type of with the little string as far as the two little circles, and then others had different arrangements as far as the paperwork. And so it was, I was just a child at that time. Well, the irony is that particular male that had went outside and smoked with, he had asked, I can't remember what he had asked, but it was something more specific to one of the guys that I had known in New Jersey, and it was, and he was I think he was about 5'9", maybe 5'10", about 180, 190 at most. And I had answered something he had asked, and it had to do with the New York City area. And he had not known anybody who actually knew that particular area of, it was where the Queens and I think it was Brooklyn. I think it was Queens and Brooklyn where they had kind of connecting area. And I was, and so after the situation regarding my biological father and him having left, and he was infuriated because of his opinions as far as that was concerned, the guys in the living room, they were just, why was he so angry? Anybody who would care about the Northeast would want answers for that. And so one of the other guys, who was very, I mean, they were all for the North Carolina Panthers, every one of them. I was the only one who was about the Patriots. And the guy who had been really, some 6'5" something, about 275 maybe. He's all, and he has shaved head and stuff like that. And he's like, how is this a situation? If you knew what my childhood was, you'd be surprised. And the guy was like, but you're a little white girl, half Chinese. and half whatever else, but I'm half Chinese. And he goes and says, that guy looked Mexican. And I was like, no, he's first generation Chinese. He grew up in foster care and orphanages, so he grew up eating different food other than what the stereotype of rice is. Okay. And the guy was like, maybe he got some gum and cheese. And it's like, well, you know, probably. It is as it is. So we talked about a few things though, and again, in like the third quarter, just before the fourth quarter, and of course, but for those who know that particular Super Bowl, when it came to the fourth quarter, that was the time frame. And so we started talking about quite a few things, and the guys were just, wow. So you know this, that, and the other. And so I knew Manny had worked at the USPS, and I said, actually, Mike, his sister, worked at the USPS in New York City with her husband. They had met at the USPS that she was working at. They were in the back room area, and he was in a bad mood. She had a bunch of whatever in a cart, and he wasn't paying attention to where he was going. He bumped into it and helped pick up all the mail, and then it was, all romance and whatever and stuff like that. And Manny was like, yeah, well, it is what it is. And the guys were like, oh, Manny, you could totally have like a girlfriend and stuff. And so about a year and a half later, he had a female move in, and then they went and got their own house or did whatever they did. I think he was from Poteet, Texas. So then about the Strawberry Festival, if I remember correctly. And so it was as it was in that particular reference. But yeah, a lot of the guys, they were, just kind of messing around and stuff. So then when it got to the fourth quarter, that was when, okay, well, we could talk about this in a minute. It's about to go down because, North Carolina Panthers to the Patriots. And I was the only one who was like, yay, go Patriots! Yay! Which is an irony, because, I'm a Republican, and it's the first time I could vote, and my biological mother and biological father voted Democrat in the state of New Jersey. So for all those people who were like, I know how people are from New Jersey, no. And so, so for anyone who is all, oh, you don't know rebellion against your parents. Well, it wasn't until 2008's election that I had learned that they were Democrats. And that wasn't until the whole time they thought I had been one. And then they learned. And so anybody who's ever had an uncomfortable Thanksgiving dinner, it was early, of course, because, the married family situation for my biological little sister. And so there was a bit of a surprise that, oh, you can't believe you're a Republican. Look at you. You're this, you're that. Yeah, well, especially in reference to Southern Democrats, there's a big difference, and we're below the Mason-Dixon line in Texas. So yeah, I'm gonna go and very much be all Republican-y and stuff. Yes. I don't want to ever have to deal with certain things, and other than the fact that I'm very much more Republican in quite a few aspects, yes, I can have certain progressive viewpoints, though I guess maybe a little independent, smidgen. I might be capable to be considered a smidgen independent-y-ish. you know, nonetheless. I might have my own way of doing things. And so I'll be myself my way, because that's how I can be myself. And so nonetheless, that for those who had known about in 2008 through the 2012 and then 2012 before the 2016 election as to Barack Obama supporters regarding 44. Well, for those who came out in support of 45, well, you have an idea. So let me remind people. So I was born and raised in New Jersey, okay? And people had claimed that they knew how people are from New Jersey, the state of Texas as well. So we were at Thanksgiving dinner, despite it being early. And so just think, we were at that. So just think of what, so yes, there's plates that are made of glass or porcelain or whatever. And then there's forks, and there's knives and spoons. Mm-hmm. And then there's the turkey knife, for those who know. And so, yeah. And so, I'm a Republican. And they didn't know. So I had my own type of coming out. And then they had already known, so I didn't have the word for pansexual. And so they already had that, and it's like, yeah, which is an irony, because you'd think, but there is the difference between Northern Democrats and Southern Democrats. So Northern Democrats, they want everything labeled as far as mainly for the scientific aspects. So the ethnic background, what type of vitamins are more necessary than other aspects, as well as what's the common thread as to, whereas in the South, well, there was kind of a situation regarding the southern area of the United States of America below the Mason-Dixon line in the 1800s-ish time frame. Kind of a huge issue. And so I have had a personal situation that I've had regarding how situations have been in reference to the fact that the state of Texas has a few military installations, a couple of guys, active duty National Guard and reservists, per military location. And then, dependents, of course, in that reference, though also veterans. And so certain viewpoints in a different capacity that I took a stand against, because that's not the way to actually do things. But hey, you got your Obamacare. And instead, that doesn't translate to other things. So again, And so I very much more Republican for a few reasons. One of that clarification. So for those who dealt with, coming out and be like, Trump supporter, well, in 2010 and 2011, I was informing them in Austin that I had voted for John McCain, that senator, and Governor Sarah Palin. And so there was that. And then 2000, and I didn't move to the Austin area by choice, by technicalities, because of the situations in reference to my daughter after McCoy Elementary School, and the Fort Worth Zoo situation, which was after my scuba diving. And that set of situations, of course, being that arrangement of problems. And I told scuba divers that I voted for Senator John McCain Governor Sarah Palin. Yeah, so remember, scuba diving, you have this thing called a regulator, though it looks like a binky, to breathe out of, that has a hose that's attached to a tank that has the air to breathe. And looking as I do, I was all, yeah, well, I don't know what your problem is. I voted for Senator John McCain and Governor Sarah Palin. So, what? And, you know, if it wasn't ballsy enough to be on a military installation at the age of 17 years old in medical hold unit saying, I want to listen to thank you very much. Thank you. I want to listen So let me add that, you know, because then you have that. And so in 2016, for that election, I was all, yeah, I'm voting for who's going to become 45. Yeah, what's up? Say you know how people are from New Jersey. Psh, don't think so. So there's that. And so then in Austin, 2020 election, psh, that's right. That's right. Yes, which is an irony because my deepest scuba dive was on the East Coast, but my scuba diving certification group is on the West Coast. That's a whole different situation. And I was born and raised in New Jersey, so what? As far as that's concerned. So I made the joke about religion as to my biological family as well as my ex-in-laws as far as all sorts of cluster aspects. So again, my biological mother, deacon of a Presbyterian church, biological father, trustee of a Presbyterian church, raised how they were. My biological father, first generation Chinese. My Bakung and my Bakpu immigrated to the United States of America to escape Mao Zedong and have a multitude of religious studies. Then there's my biological mother, and her mom went to seminary college later, though had been a part of the Rosicrucians and the Eastern Star. My grandpa Gavitt, as far as non-denominational-ish, type-ish Christian. And then my my biological mother's half-sister, one of them was a Southern Baptist and then became a Catholic. And then the other sister or half-sister to my biological mother, she was raised Christian, though became a pagan or a Wiccan or whatever. And then one of her half-brothers is a non-denominational Christian. He had went into the Air Force, Leonard Gavitt, and then the other one was raised Christian as well, though became a pagan warlock, though had converted later, if I remember from some of the stuff I saw. And then whatever spouses, as far as the other factors. Then you have my ex-in-laws. So my biological, parents and that whole there. Remember, majority of them are Democrats. I'm a Republican. And so then there's my ex-father-in-law, who was raised Southern Baptist in Alabama, okay, learned that he knew that he had Cherokee in him, and so then he went to become a Reformed Jew. My ex-mother-in-law, who was born in the Dominican Republic, from what I was informed of, practiced Dominican Republic Catholicism mixed with Santeria. As far as I was concerned, one ex-sister-in-law, which is an irony, Nipples sister, so one of the two Nipples sisters from Fort Worth High School in the 1980s, for those who can remember, Mary Evangelina, she had been raised Catholic, though then went and became a non-denominational Christian. The other of the two had been raised with the same Catholicism and then became like an Orthodox type of Catholic. And then the other brother, or the oldest brother, Tony, he had been raised that way, kind of didn't want to deal with certain things, and then became a reborn Southern Baptist. Okay, and so, and then there was my dead ex-husband, and he just refused religion altogether. Though he tried in reference to a few things, which I just, no. No. There was an issue in the backyard where he took my candles and then arranged them around himself and put him in the wrong directions, didn't even know what he was doing, and it was bad. It's so bad. Anyway, so there was that, and then, I was baptized Methodist before being baptized Presbyterian. Went to Old Tennant Presbyterian Church, aside from being the original baby Jesus Christ, as far as that was concerned, and then went through confirmation class, which took a year, and confirmed member of Old Tennant Presbyterian Church and Presbyterian Church USA, while going to St. John Vianney High School, and then during that time frame, having learned about Native Americans, so as far as the different 5 different tribes, so then studied shamanism and Native Americanism and a few other isms, as I joke, and so yeah. And then maybe there is possibly someone who, other than the rabbis that would show up to Old Tennant Presbyterian Church during Passover and Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah to explain factors, 1 or 2 yentas and yadis at Asher Homes or Asher Homes, because you had the school performances, and so the yentas and yadis with the Asher is here. Oh, well, that's fantastic. We're going to Asher home. Yeah, because at the synagogue with the temple with the rabbi, if you know anything, no, because I can tell them that, because we're going to have just it's a fantastic performance at Asher Homes Elementary. No. We're gonna go to Asher. Because, it's like the Target types, as far as Target. For those who don't understand that, I'm sure there's someone who could explain that to you. And so my biological little sister did that. She's like, I'm gonna go to Target. What? What's Target? And so I thought it was a restaurant or something, and she's like, Target? Don't you know what Target is? No. So then she spelled it out, and I was like, Target? And she was like, I prefer it at Target. A little full of yourself, don't you think? Just a smidgen, by a lot. And so then she had her issues as far as that was concerned, and just call it the irony, told her to call it Target. And so it is as it is, it is as it is. So I went that way. But so had told these guys about my voting at the same time, obviously before 44. And so they were kind of, well, why, and this is before the 4th quarter, just so you know. So, well, what do you mean you voted for Bush? You voted for Junior? Yeah, I'm not too, I have certain opinions regarding what his dad had been a part of, but that is what it is. As far as, don't think that's his job to clean up what his dad did. That's my personal opinion on that. However, he's doing the best he can, and I can respect that in that comparison. And so they were just, well, what did he do? I don't have words for that. So that's I don't have words for that. So I'm just gonna, maybe at some point you'll learn about it. And the guys were like, what would that be? Well, there's I don't really, it's not that big of a deal, it's okay. I don't want to. And the guys were just, well, what is it? Oh, nothing that. What you need to know is it's not going to be a problem after a little bit of time. Some of the stuff's going to be taken care of, and once that's kind of smoothed over, it'll be cool. As cool as it can be out there, And I don't mean nighttime, just when it's cool. And the guys were like, what? And I'm like, so, at nighttime when the sun isn't in the sky, when the sun isn't in the sky, I can see how I sound as a hippie at this point. Nonetheless, so when the sun isn't in the sky, night time, it's the moon, and so it's not as warm out, so it's technically cooler. Yeah, so that's totally what I'm referring to right now. Hey, look, it's about to be the fourth quarter. And so the guys are just, what? Oh, it's the fourth quarter. So then one of the guys at this Super Bowl party, he goes, North Carolina. And so he's just messing around. It's like, oh yeah, Patriots. And so we go back and forth, and he's like, there's a southern sort of whatever, and so on and so forth. Yeah, well, the North, I know you got North in the name regarding the Panthers. However, since you want to go there, since, it's okay because the North won before and the North will do it again. So what? And so the guy was just, well, the Panthers are rawr, and yes, that's fine. Patriots are still the Patriots. Patriots are gonna win, just saying. And so we went back and forth. Now, mind you, this guy, he then stands up and he's completely towering over me. I am only 5'4", and he's like 6'4", 6'5", and I'm just all, yeah, so, whatever. I am not scaredy. Which was funny because then this guy just, what'd you do that for? So then, for those who didn't know, the Patriots won. And so with that winning touchdown and all that, so by that point, Mike had returned back, he had calmed down, and then, so I got really excited. I was like, yes, totally, yeah, totally, because the Patriots, totally, what? And Mike got upset because, so then it went the way it did as far as that was concerned. Still, Patriots won. So, because Patriots. as I was concerned, well, the guys, as far as the something or another with the gambling, something, I go and tell Manny, I won. And he's like, yes, ish, because of the number situation or something like that. And I was, well, I still won. I don't understand the rest of the other stuff. That is as it is. I still win. So the rest of the guys, they were like, I can't believe you totally called it. Totally called it. And so they were all upset. I haven't ever seen so many so many grown adults, biologically, that were upset in reference to the Super Bowl. It was very weird to see that. They were kind of sad emotionally. And so some of these guys are just like, I can't believe the Patriots won. And they were so sad. And it was, well, I told you it was good. So I actually did this. I got real close and I was like, so did I tell you that the Patriots were gonna win? And the guy was, yeah, but like, you're a girl. Though I still told you that the Patriots were gonna win. And the guy was like, yeah, but like, it's important because I wanted the I was like, so I'm just gonna let you know I told you the Patriots were gonna win. I told you that. I don't really like saying I told you that, but So this guy who, when I'm at this level, he's still like this, because huge shoulders too, and he's just, I can't believe it. And so I was like, you want something to smile about? Because this guy was so upset, I didn't understand why. I have no idea. And he's like, yeah, you tell me something. This guy's so sad. so pouty. I was like, well, it's a eh. And he's like, what do you mean it's a? Well, you guys, well, the Patriots went wrong. It's a and that didn't help at all. Not to the same level, though. Then he started looking around and he's like, there's the color black. And I was like, what does that have to do with anything? And he goes, the Panthers. I was like, okay, all right. And so then we started talking about New York City and stuff like that, and that kind of changed a few things because we started talking about where my grandmama and my grandpapa were. So, very, very briefly. And I said, well, it's kind of really funny. He's like, what? We won! Total Patriots, right? Yeah, you said you know how people are from New Jersey. I went, you scared me. Well, you're not sad anymore, so there you go. And so, see, you can breathe. Yeah, you can breathe. Yeah, that's something to be happy about. Simple things for simple minds. So yeah, Manny was kind of surprised how all that went, and it was, well, what can I say? It is what it is. Well, he had worked for USPS. He had dealt with the homeowners association a time or two, such as the 51st slat, as far as a letter from the homeowners association, and I had told him some of the stuff that I was dealing with as well, and informed him, yeah, well, you can't have firearms. And he said, what? I said, yeah, in a homeowners association, you can't have firearms unless they change the covenant. And he was, what? I said, go look at the covenant. In the covenant of the homeowners association, and this was for Pheasant Creek subdivision, it's literally in there, it violates the Second Amendment constitutional right. And I've brought it up to some of the people, but they're not willing to take a stand as far as that's concerned. And he was, what do you mean? Well, he started getting letters more often from the homeowners association after that. And it was really, it was kind of like cat's eye, the second part of that as the only metaphor that I could give. And a bunch of people that I had informed about that, they were like, no, homeowners association, no. I mean, what if there's an invasion? And they were like, well, our Second Amendment. And it's like, yeah, well, I'm about constitutional rights, especially the Second Amendment. I'm kind of about that. And so, it makes some things a little bit easier, but, we also have to be capable to maintain and sustain correctly and all that sort of stuff. And though Manny was surprised because of the New Jersey aspect to that, and it was, well, that's the truth. In certain areas, so in New York City, you don't have that in the same way, though I think in New York State, there's certain, to a degree-ish. And so, compared to New Jersey, though, New Jersey is New Jersey. And so, the guys, as far as whatever the gambling thing was, the big funny part between everyone was was how bad the numbers were, because I didn't understand at all, though Manny had actually written down the numbers despite what it was, and there was something at the end of that particular Super Bowl where every number that I had written was on or that I had told him that he had written was on the screen. As far as something, I can't remember what it was, in reference to, I can't remember what it was, but I had actually also written it down because we had to, whenever something with that, we had to put it on a piece of paper, and then something as far as that was concerned, I don't know. I didn't understand any of it at all. And so, yeah, it was as it was. And so, I can make fun of myself easily for that. But yeah, that Super Bowl was a weird one, obviously. So, the whole way that went, shortly afterwards, I think it was about a year and a half at the most, Manny had moved out with the female that he had gotten in a relationship with, as far as that was concerned, and homeowners association stuff was as it was shortly thereafter. And so, because the Datsun truck, and which is an irony, a few other factors regarding, but nonetheless, and then at that particular point in time, my now dead ex-husband, he was working, irony of Dotson, Doctor's son, he had been working at this lab. Well, all of the information had to do with the experiment that I had come up with in reference to the T genome, as far as the whole thing, as far as including the medium, the range of the medium too, because I knew that there were different types of mediums, and as far as the percentage, and the way to actually extrapolate some of the DNA as far as I was concerned, as far as the T genome, among a few other situations, and went the way it did. I'm particular about my work, and so my work is my work as far as that's concerned. It was found out that I can't have or 3/4 Cantonese and 1/4 Mandarin, in reference to the half Chinese part at a Christmas dinner, and well, technically it was Chinese New Year, and then at that year, the Christmas dinner, it went the way it did because they're Mandarins. And so I've already explained that particular factor in the comparison. And so I had already dealt with a few things regarding a different lab in the same floor regarding UTHU-SCA or something like that, or SCSA, whatever it was. And it was, well, and I had actually told Dr. Sun, both of them in their house, well, I came up with this work. And I had the proof in that reference had to do with the gardening. And so it was one of those, this is my what have you, and you're gonna accept that as the reality because it's the truth. Because there were certain questions that the female Dr. Sun to the male Dr. Sun had asked in regards of the actual experiment, and I had given the details in those references in the backyard while making gardening references at the time. And so after the year 2008 and that whole situation, they had needed to accept, as I had said, well, what work that he actually did in comparison to my work, intellectual property rights. I had come up with that in the year 2000 as far as that particular situation. And so those factors as to sight, for example, and a few other situations such as my scuba diving in comparison because of my background, my training, and my buckung and my buckpoo. However, who knows about those particular factors and those references, because they had escaped Mao Zedong. Most importantly, they didn't want to deal with some of the other factors that led up to Tiananmen Square. So they were capable to not have to deal with what led up to that, and it's not as though Tiananmen Square was the only location in China that had occurred to. So Tiananmen Square was small, and that large difference because there's Hong Kong and Beijing, and they had their own version, from what I was informed, because of certain disagreements, and so as to how certain things should be. And so because of what Mao Zedong had been put through, that's how Mao Zedong had actually been put into power. Because Mao Zedong, his biological family had not made the correct choices at the time, and other people throughout the countrysides had learned of certain things. And it took a while, especially back then, to that understanding, and it became heavier and heavier as far as that was concerned. And the irony, my biological mother, a United States of America born female, she had actually really liked Mao Zedong. And I had made attempts to explain to people about that, and they didn't see any need to pay attention because, you know, it's just the same thing to my psyche as far as that was concerned. So it was as it was, nonetheless. Made attempts to explain as best as they could. However, 2000 through 2012 more specifically went the way that had before, obviously the 1980s and 1990s, among a few other factors. And so it was as it was. And so been doing what I could to process a few things, especially in reference to 2001 because of the evening skyline. First time sight in February of 2022. So it took, I think it was 17 or 18 years for me to get to be capable to by that point. So from the time I had said I was gonna. So. Nonetheless, you guys have a good day. Today is the 6th of June, 2022. 6th June, 2022.